right, so we have the data, insights, and the technology, but are we using them efficiently, effectively? Our next panel, the answers are in the data. Unlocking impact through insight collaboration brings together academics and not-for-profit data leaders who are collaborating to explore innovative uses of data in order to help children and young people who are underserved. Please welcome our guests to the stage, Trent Miller, CEO of Youth Projects, Anne Hampshire, Head of Research and Advocacy, the Smith Family, Steve Marchand, Research Fellow, University of Melbourne, and our host, the one and only Dr. Kristen Moeller-Saxon, Data Capability Lead of InfoChange. And I do have a fun fact. Trent's love of data started all the way back in early high school, where he became obsessed and fell in love with fantasy sports in the AFL and NBA. And by the time he was 18, he cracked the top 10 nationally in both competitions. Turns out spreadsheets and salary caps were a gateway to a career in data-driven impact. Come on up, and while you're coming up, I will talk about the sponsors for today, for this panel. It's sponsored by our friends at GWI Digital, who have also kindly sponsored the Best Use of Data for Community Impact Award category at the NFP Technology Awards upstairs tonight. The GWI Digital team are keen to talk all things data and cyber at their stand in the expo over the next 2 days. Over to you.
Great. Thank you. And I'll just grab the clicker.
There you go.
Great. Oh, here we go. We've got something interesting going on here. No. There we go. This is, I know, the session just before lunch, but it is going to be the most compelling session of the day. In part because I think what we've heard already is that data has been the stream, really, that's run through the conversations that we've been hearing so far today. And as I acknowledge the people, the Wurundjeri and the Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, pay my respects to elders past and present and Aboriginal people here today, I want to thank you really for leading the way on an issue that I think is really critical for us all around data sovereignty. And Cassandra raised a real provocation to us before. How many of you know about PLIDA and MADIP and BLADE and the multitude of other linked data sets that are out there that have got data about all of us that we can use for good? You know, I think our sector is really focused on using data for good, but we need to lead the way on these discussions about what data is collected about us and about the people we work with, how we use that data, and is it what they want? You know, are you happy for your data to be in linked data sets? And if you're not, what can you do about it? So I lead the Data Catalyst Network, and I'm really pleased today, although I don't have a slide. You're going to have to go out and have a chat to the people in the breaks about the network that we're launching, the next phase of our work. And our role is to build the data capability of the not-for-profit network. And we do that through a range of activities, one being our community of practice, where we get together and we talk about these sorts of issues. You know, what are you doing with data? What are other ways that you can work with data? And one of the reasons why this is going to be such a great session is we're going to hear from everyone here today about some really practical examples of what you can be doing and thinking about. But the really exciting bit about the next phase is that we're going to be working with small to medium-sized not-for-profits, and if you're one of those or know of one of those that's got a great idea or would just love to do more with data but you don't know where to start, we're going to be able to support you with that, with bringing expertise in to help you set those projects up and help you do data better. So, you know, that's thanks to the support of the Paul Ramsay Foundation, you heard Liz mentioning before, Minderoo Foundation, Microsoft we're going to be working with, and the Good Data Institute. So there's a whole bunch of people who really do care about improving the data capability of the sector. So with that background, what I want to do is hand over now really and hear from those experts at the coalface from three really different perspectives. And talk about, and get you perhaps just initially to describe data projects that you've worked with and give people a feel about how do you get them going? What do they look like? What were you trying to achieve? So perhaps if I hand over to you, Anne, to do that, and shall I get this slide up?
That'd be
Is that
great
okay?
in a minute. Yeah, thank you so much. So it's great to be here. Over the last 5 years, the Smith family has been working with state departments of education to try and get a data exchange arrangement up and running. And we've managed over those 5 years to get it up and running with 4 of those departments. And what that means is that our frontline staff get in real time access to data on the students and young people who we support that the Department of Education holds. So things like school attendance, things like literacy and numeracy, whether a child has moved school. And what that allows us to do is actually be, as you can probably imagine, much more responsive in a targeted and timely way to the needs of those students and families. We might shoot up that. And this will look a little bit clunky because it's obviously a screen, but it's a Power BI dashboard and it's designed for our busy frontline team members, and we might move to the next one. You can imagine green is good, red is problematic, and so it actually helps in real time to direct our frontline team members to who might need support most quickly. And it's all been very much focused on helping our staff to help the children and families we support in an early intervention way. And this is we can get data over time. So our frontline team members know where a child started school in terms of were they on track, what was their literacy and numeracy like, what's their school attendance, etc., etc. And using all of that data, and as the social worker Jess told us, in the most effective way, what are the needs now, what's changing, what's improving. So targeted and timely support, very much related to our purpose, and I'll come back to purpose, I'm sure, in questions going forward, because our purpose as an organisation, and Doug probably flagged this morning, is to help improve the educational outcomes of children experiencing disadvantage. Inequity in educational outcomes, as many of you would know, is one of our major social policy issues. So as you've just flagged, Kristen, this actually is helping us do our work better with the goal of helping improve children's educational outcomes.
Fantastic. Thanks, Anne. Trent.
Hi everyone. So Youth Projects, we're a Melbourne-based charity, and a lion's share of our work really is in youth employment. We also have service domains in mental health, primary health, AOD, and we've got a wonderful social enterprise, The Little Social. If you're ever in Melbourne and looking for a coffee, it would be remiss of me not to give that a plug. For us, I guess, becoming part of this network, the challenges for youth unemployment are significant. Youth unemployment rate has consistently been double the general population unemployment rate, and it's significantly worse after major global events, and unfortunately we've had a significant amount of those in recent times. And where that's left us is that 1 in 5 young people who are looking for work have been doing so for more than 12 months. 1 in 5. And in addition, the Productivity Commission found that the average wage of a young person working hasn't increased for 10 years. When you consider the cost of living increases and a young person's wage hasn't kept up with that pace, it's just simply been unacceptable for youth projects. So when we were welcomed into the Data Catalyst Network to work specifically on a youth employment program that was really targeting early school leavers, what is a good quality job and where are the industries that they're being located. It was a great opportunity to partner with like-minded people and like-minded organisations, and especially to leverage the subject matter expertise of my good friend Steve here, who works for the Melbourne Institute, that being a medium to large size not-for-profit, you just simply don't get access to. And we started really with a simple question: what does a good quality job look like for an early school leaver? And by digging into a broad range of data sets, we're able to ascertain how we best go about designing new programs, sharpening programs, getting more buy-in from employer practice, which can then start to influence systems change.
Great, thanks, Chen. Steve.
Hi, everyone. I work at the Melbourne Institute of Applied Economic and Social Research at the University of Melbourne. This is a non-teaching department, and instead of teaching, we do a lot of policy work. Our research is expected to aim for impact, so we're trying to bring academic expertise into the policy world and get it out of universities. And so joining the Data Catalyst Network was a really good opportunity to do this, to get out of my office and meet people who have very good data, who are not probably using it as much as they could. And we started talking about whether or not that data might hold some insights that would be valuable. So yeah, I think that more generally, there's a big increase in the availability of administrative data from different organizations. So administrative data are data that are collected by organizations in the process of managing their organizations. They're not meant for research purposes or for doing a study. And this data is very rich. There are data like that everywhere, that a lot of data custodians that have their own administrative data. And when you access that as an outsider, it can be a mess. It's not meant to be studied directly. So it's really important, I think, to develop these collaborations with people who produce this data. They're the ones who know what the data mean. And I think that there's a future in talking more about all the data that people have and how it could be used by people who specialize in doing that.
Great, thank you. And I wonder if you would mind continuing on, Steve, and telling us a bit about what you learned by doing that analysis and what data sets you accessed and how you did that.
Yeah, at first we thought we would be using the data from a few service providers that were part of the Data Catalyst Network, but that in the end we requested that data through the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations. And we got access to data from all employment service providers across Australia, and we could do a pretty interesting analysis. So we weren't interested in looking at the determinant of job placements that lead to longer-term outcomes. The motivation was that it seemed to be that many people thought that so many of these job placements for young people led to very short employment, very quick turnover, and that's also that's what we found in the data. Almost 50% of the job placements led to an employment duration of less than 12 weeks. And so the next step was to look at the determinants. We looked at how these durations compared across different demographic characteristics. We didn't find any strong differences by what we could observe in the data, except by skill levels. Those who had already some non-school or school qualifications seem to do better. So what we also looked at was the effect of labor market conditions, local labor market conditions. So we mapped the data with external indicators of labor market needs across occupations, data on vacancies by regions and by regions and by occupation, data on employment, data on unemployment as well. So to get measures of people searching for jobs and employers searching for people across occupations. And what we found is that these regions, in general, that are looking for more, where employers are looking for more people, when people are placed into jobs in these regions, it does look like they're doing better in terms of duration. And when you look at specific occupations that have the highest measures of labor market needs, it really does look like it helps a lot. And so I think that that's pretty interesting in terms of the implications for how employment service programs could be tailored to local labor market needs.
Look, I don't know if you've got questions, but one of the things that triggered for me was you saying that it's not so much about the demographic characteristics of young people. You know,
That's right.
it's actually about labour markets. And so often I think we're talking about young people. It's almost a sort of victim blaming sort of conversation, isn't it? If you had more skills, or if you know, if you're male or female or able-bodied or not, or any of those things, and it's not actually about that. It's about the sort of economic conditions and the job availability in the area.
Yeah, at least that's what we could see by just looking at the measures of employment duration that we had. So, you know, we need to be aware of the limitations.
Yeah.
But yeah, what really seemed to play the biggest roles were the local labor market conditions for specific occupations.
And so I'm sort of thinking, Trent, what did you sort of take away from that in terms of learnings as someone working in youth employment?
Yeah, I think there definitely is some grey around how important the labour market is. I think that's a key factor, but there's also other influencing factors when you're looking at demographics of a young person. And we're typically looking at early school leavers here, so they're facing a range of different barriers to employment. But what we're learning on the ground is that some of those barriers don't necessarily need to be addressed prior to a young person starting employment, but can actually be addressed concurrently when a young person is in a job. So for example, we've had significant amount of success supporting a young person's ill mental health. Once they get a job, they feel like they've got a bit more routine, they're building some social connectedness, and it's not always the case that that needs to be addressed before a young person goes into employment. So for us, it's really important that we have a holistic model of support and treat young people as individuals and develop tailored plans based on what their needs are. For us as an organisation, it's, I guess, challenging our thinking around what our youth employment programs look like. So using the labour market data and understanding where the opportunities are, we can now start to co-design programs with employers. So understanding what are the basic skills that you need for an entry-level worker. Like, do you really need 3 years of experience to be able to step foot into your business? If not, what are those basic skills that's needed? How do we partner with a local TAFE or training organisation that can help equip these young people with those skills? And we'll also build up their soft skills so that they're ready to hit the ground running from day one.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. A lot of not-for-profits are very focused on their sort of internal evaluation data, and yet what I'm hearing you saying is that you've got some really great insights out of working with external data sets, but also working collaboratively. And I thought, you know, not only do we get the learnings from the findings, but I'm keen, did you sort of have any insights on what it was like to try to collaborate and use that external data, and did you learn anything from that process that's useful?
Yeah, I think, I mean, collaboration is key in this sector, and often we become quite siloed in our organisations because we're all facing significant challenges. But the way that I guess Steve from Melbourne Uni was able to pull a range of different data sets that we're often not even considering internally and make them into something that makes sense, that's translatable, and it's something that we can pilot and continuously learn and potentially build on our partnership to run a range of pilots that are focused on industries in demand and see the successful results, and then measure whether that's successful, and then take that to funding partners, whether it be philanthropy or government, to have that program be funded on a long-term basis.
Great, thank you. And so the Smith family sort of comes at things like from a slightly different perspective, and thinking about, like, I feel like there's so many really valuable learnings from the data exchange.
And some of them will very much pick up what Trent was just talking about. So I might talk a little bit about that process and what we've learned, because I think we've actually learned a lot. The very first starting point, and I know this will sound completely obvious, but I couldn't emphasise it enough, is that we've learnt that having clarity on the why of a data initiative is incredibly important, and that all partners are very clear about the why. And unless you do that, and it can take time at the beginning, and sometimes of course we all agree with, you know, educational equity, you actually, I think, need to spend quite a bit of time working that through at the beginning, because otherwise, for the partner's perspective, it would be very easy to walk away. If you think about the last 5 years, we've had COVID, we needed legislative change in South Australia. People change priorities. If we hadn't done, and it's only in hindsight you know this, if we hadn't done the really hard work about getting clarity about why do we want to do it and why do you want to do it, then I think it would have been very easy for the departments to walk away. Equity, as I've said, is at the core of what we're doing, and actually it's at the core of what education departments are also trying to achieve. So being really clear about that is important. As Trent just flagged, it's the collaboration, and we talk about collaboration a lot. This data exchange is collaboration on steroids. It's messy, it's multi-layered. It involves collaboration first and foremost with our students and families who we support. It's actually involved every part of the Smith family. I couldn't name a department that it hasn't involved, which surprised us. It's involved 4 jurisdictions across the country. And so I think some of what we need to collectively be able to do is to develop, nurture, sustain what are new, complex, long-term, trusting collaborations and partnerships for purpose. And I think the sorts of skills that I think we need to learn probably a bit more of, and some of them are characteristics. We've certainly learnt, I'd park the technical skills for the moment. I think what we've learnt more importantly is that these things will take time, patience, influencing skills. They will take innovation, flexibility and persistence. And sometimes you just need to turn yourself around and turn yourself backwards and go, okay, I think we'll go a different way. Some of the jurisdictions have taken 3 years, some of them have taken 12 months. But also what we've learned is that it's absolutely worth it. Our frontline team members say this is a complete game changer for their capacity to deliver a much, much better service to children and families. They've got lots of examples of young people who are not early school leavers because we've had the data and we've been able to work with schools. So that's some of what we've learned. What we've also learned is that sometimes the most reluctant data user at the beginning will become the data champion, and that is a beautiful thing to see. So we've got one person who I can really clearly think about who didn't use our dashboard for about 6 months, but now uses it daily. So something happened over time, and being willing to go with that, and being willing to go with supporting team members in their pace and providing them with the type of support that they will need.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was just watching something the other day about data culture, and this person was sort of suggesting that it's not necessarily so much that you need some high-powered data engineer or scientist in your organisation. What you need is that everybody sees themselves as having a data component to their work. And I think that can be such a tricky idea in our field, that we're often seeing ourselves as really human-focused, and that this stuff is the red tape, it's the stuff that's holding us back from doing the valuable work. And yet what you're saying...
I think our absolute experience, and this is what our team members would say, is the data helps us do the work we've come to the Smith family to do. We can do it better, and now we understand it. And we can work better with students, we can work better with families, we can be much more targeted and timely. The surprise for us was we've now got better partnerships with the schools that we're working with, because we've both got access to the same data. And so we come together around a student who might be struggling, or conversely what's happened is a student who we can see a change in the dashboard where they've actually improved their literacy and numeracy, or they've improved their attendance, and that's such an affirmation that our frontline team members can go back to them with. So people, as we heard in the previous panel, are absolutely at the centre of this, and that's why it gives our team members now, didn't happen overnight, but it gives them a real buzz.
Yeah, great. So I was thinking, I was at a conference and they were talking about working in place, with local communities. And this person was saying, so often in place we're talking about building capability of local services, as if somehow there's a deficit, that they don't have enough. And so the provocation that I was throwing out was, maybe it's other people who don't have the capabilities. Maybe it's governments who don't have the capabilities to share data in a way that we need it. Maybe it is corporations or others who aren't stepping up to the plate as well. So with that in mind, I'm wondering if each of you could talk a little bit about what you see are the key issues in using data more effectively. And it might be in your own agency, but maybe you want to put a call out to other parts of the sector to say, this is what we need from you so we can do data better.
Sure. So my first point was actually that we, I think, need to grow skills across the sectors to work in this collaborative space. And we've talked collectively about collaboration for a long period of time, but we're actually talking about new types of collaboration. I think we do need stronger skills within our sector, but also with academics and also with government to actually make these sorts of data arrangements possible so that we can sustain. These are not going to be quick responses if it's a data response, because over time you'll get more and more out of it. So you do need, I think, to build the cross-sectoral skills to build, sustain, and to continue to grow those multi-layered complex partnerships. I think we also need to be, and we talked about language in the previous session, I think we need to be really clear internally and externally about the why of data. And unless it has the social justice, equity, economic lens, etc. This is not about building up our organisations, etc., etc. This is about putting at the centre of our data work whoever it is that we support, in our case children and families, young people, etc. If you put them at the centre and then be very clear internally and externally, I think in language we need to do that. I think we also, and I'm head of research, I think what we need to do is to be clear about and sharpen our lens on what data is critical for our work. As researchers, sometimes we can go, oh, I'd like that, and that, and that, and that, and that. And there's a whole lot of really data that we might think is interesting. But in this particular case, I think we have to say, will it help our practice? There's an important part for research, but will it help us as an organisation achieve our mission around supporting children and young people more effectively? One of the things I didn't mention was that families and our primary carers are incredibly supportive of the data exchange initiative. That was a big unknown when we went into it, and that's a big lesson for us all. So 95% of the thousands of parents who we've asked, are you happy that we tell the Department of Education that your child is on Learning for Life? And are you happy for the Smith family, we'd use the consent language, to have data on your child, including data that is very sensitive, like your child's been suspended? 95% of them said yes. So a big part, I think, of what we need to do is help empower those people who own the data, and we need to think about data ownership differently. The data is owned by the person who it belongs to, whose data it is. And so I think that's one of the big learnings for us, and that I think we need to do a bit more of that. And of course there'll be issues around resourcing, building capability, et cetera, but I think they're some of the big ones for me.
Great, thank you.
I think you hogged all of that, Anne. I don't know if I've got much more to add.
I'm sorry.
I guess in short, I think what particularly we've learnt from this project was that collaborating with a few organisations who work right across Australia gave us extra buy-in with government, which enabled them to feel safer to share such a large data set and having the backing of a major university. If we had tried to do that ourselves, it just simply would not have been possible. And so the why was articulated really well, as what Anne mentioned before. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I see a question there around getting access to the data. It wasn't easy. I think it took a good 12 months of meetings backwards and forwards and writing support letters from a service provider to Melbourne Uni contributing their part. So it was a long haul, but it has longevity to this data. It's something that can be ongoing, continuously measured and continuously improved. So you've really got to be able to have the willingness to grit it out and see it out for the long-term benefit.
Great, thanks.
One dimension that I think would be important to think about is how to use data for proper, credible program evaluation. That's one of my field of specialization. And so often, we as academics were solicited for our inputs to evaluate a program based on just whatever data happens to be available after the program has run for years. And most often you look at what you have, and it's not possible to do something credible. So, you know, that's very difficult to change, but it's possible to change. And I have an example. I'm starting, along with a colleague at the Melbourne Institute, and 2 charities, a new project. So one of the charity is a youth project, Small World. And the other charity is We Are Mobilized. They're based in Melbourne, and they run programs for young people at risk of homelessness. And we're implementing the program that they run with evaluation in mind from the start. So we're starting by collecting the data on all the potential participants so that we make sure that we'll be able to follow them all. And we're going to be able to follow them all in the administrative data as well from the Victorian state government. Homelessness service data, social housing data, and other data. And then within these people, we're going to randomize the allocation into treatment. For certain people will be part of a program that gives cash transfer and coaching and financial workshops and some follow-ups. And we're going to be able to follow these people along with a completely comparable comparison group in the long term. And that's not something you could normally do if you just think about the evaluation after the program has run. So yeah, we're doing it. It's, you know, textbook proper program evaluation, and we're pretty happy about it. And I think to do more of that, we should be talking more about how we should evaluate programs to start with.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great parts about having had you involve Steve in the University of Melbourne was being able to get access to, like you say, part of it is it provides you with some of the keys, doorways through which you can get to work with government data, but also it's all of that sort of thinking and expertise around designing projects and evaluations, isn't it, that you can bring in. And I know so often not-for-profits can find it hard to find their way into who are the researchers and the people that you can get help with, and you know, hopefully people will catch up with Steve afterwards in the break, and Trent and Anne, to learn about how you do that, because you know, I think there is so much value to be gained by working collaboratively across our sectors. I'm conscious that we had a range of questions too, and I think we answered a number of them through our answers, but please, I hope you take the opportunity to talk to Anne, Trent and Steve in the break, and you know, explore some of those issues in more detail. But I'd like you all to, would want to thank you all for your contribution today.